Hi, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Macro Pro and Friends. This is our summer school series, and today we have Eric Miller joining me. Eric, how are you?
I'm great. How are you, Di?
I am fantastic. Now, Eric, you are the president and owner of EMI Investigations, right?
That is correct.
Now, that is something that I'm sure keeps you really busy. So this is the summertime. I'm hoping you're going to tell me that you've done something fun this summer.
You know, I was able to take a little trip with the family and brought the kids to Mexico for the first time in their all-inclusive resort type of thing. And they had an absolute blast. And now it's about to be my 7-year-old's birthday. And for her birthday theme, she wants to do an all-inclusive resort theme. So we're having some of our friends over and we're going to make this house look like a all-inclusive resort. And we'll see how it goes. It should be fun, though.
I've never heard that as a theme, but I think it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. And all-inclusive resorts are probably one of my most favorite places to go. I particularly love going to Cozumel because of scuba diving. Do you dive?
I have dove, and yeah, I actually did the Great Barrier Reef when I was younger down in Australia, which is absolutely amazing.
Oh, now I'm just jealous. Okay, I'm just jealous. As I'm sure a lot of our attendees. So, all right. So I'm just gonna ask people if you have ever been to an all-inclusive. Just type in yes in the question box, so Eric and I can see that because it will be fun to see who else loves to go to all-inclusives. Okay, Eric, so before we get going, I've got a little bit of business to do. Oh, Lori said no. Well, Lori, I hope that you do go. And Nicole said yes, and it looks like Nija has said yes. So it looks like we've got some people who enjoy what we do. All right, so let's get to the housekeeping. Today's webinar is worth 1 CEU credit, and you must be logged on to the GoWebinar platform. So by us seeing your name as an attendee, you know that you are logged on. Today's is worth 1 CEU credit. You'll be receiving that via email today within 2 hours. If you have any problems downloading it, it does take a little while to get there. You'll see a little blue light that circle that spins and spins and spins. Eventually it'll pop up. If you have a problem with that, it could be your company's firewall. So check with your IT department. And then there are handouts. Eric put together some really nice handouts. In addition to that, we have some handouts on Macro Pro services. So we have those available for you to look at as well. Now, Eric is going to be talking about a lot of things. So if you have any questions at all, please be sure to ask them. So it's going to be in the chat box where you put yes or no in, and I will ask those. And then this is going to be such a great presentation. You're going to want to see it again, and you can watch it on the YouTube channel and see Mr. Eric right there in the flesh. So I am going to turn this over to you again, everybody. I will be monitoring those questions for Eric.
Awesome. And so we're good now. I press the start broadcast button. Hopefully. All right, I don't know if I'm supposed to push this button or not.
It's already recording, so all you have to do is start your presentation.
Then we're good. Okay, awesome. All right, well, hello everybody, and thank you for being here today. Like Diane said, my name is Eric Miller. I'm with EMI, and we do investigation services. We are solely in California right now, up and down the state. Eventually, we'll spread out into the rest of the nation, but you know, we've been around for about 5 years now. Anniversary in September, so coming up on 5, and had a blast so far. Been in the industry for a lot longer than that, so know the ins and outs of investigations quite well, and how you all can use them and make them help you with your claims. So, like Diane said, this is typically a very interactive type of a presentation. I love questions. I love talking about, you know, what you've had issues with, what you've seen, and that kind of thing. So if you do have questions or anything you want to chime in with, please do it. And Diane's going to read those questions off immediately so that we can talk about them when it's actually in the presentation. But even if it's just a random question, I'm more than happy to either come back to it or say we're going to talk about that later or something like that. So we're going to dive right in here. So today we're talking about this is all about school, right? And so what things you shouldn't say in school? And I said, you know, what things should we not say in school, and then change that into investigations? Well, one of a very, very funny movie that most of you have probably seen is something called Blazing Saddles. Now, when I'm with everybody, then we can go back and forth and laugh and say, oh yeah, I've seen it, I haven't seen it. Has everybody seen this movie? You guys can just throw into the little chat box there whether you've seen it or not. Now, if you have it, it's no big deal. It's not like you have to see the movie in order to know what we're talking about here. But again, it's one of those older movies that if it were to come out today, there would be a lot of people that either don't like it because of what was actually said in the movie, or think that it's offensive, or any of those kinds of things. So there's some things in that movie that you typically shouldn't say nowadays, as opposed to back then. So we're going to take that and move that into investigations of some things that maybe shouldn't have been said during investigations. But just to focus on the movie real fast, a couple things about Blazing Saddles. If you have seen it or haven't seen it, this will bring it back to you. All right, move on with. Oh, here we go. All right, now it's working. All right, we got that one. All right, so the movie, it was from 1974. It was a satirical Western black comedy written by Mel Brooks, Andrew Bergman, Richard Pryor, Norman Steinberg, and Alan Uger. It's on the number 6 American Film Institute's 100 Years Laugh list. It was supposed to be called Tex X, but the reason why they didn't call it that was because they thought it was a pornographic video with that type of title. Richard Pryor was supposed to be the main person in it. However, due to drug arrests and some things going on in his outside life, the person they ended up picking was Cleavon Little. John Wayne actually read for it, and he was going to be the other person in the movie. However, his thought was it was too blue. That was his reaction to it. It wasn't his wholesome type of demeanor that they had in that movie. So they went with Gene Wilder. And then it ended up producing about $119 million, which is a lot of money back then and still a lot of money now. All right. And if you haven't seen it, here's the title there so you can see all of that. All right. Now, moving into the investigation world, there's some things that you just shouldn't say. Now, we had I always like to get into actual cases and stuff like that, because a lot more interesting than me just sitting up here and talking about, just, oh, well, here's what you do here and here. Well, there was a 55-year-old truck driver. He had a low back and right hip injury. He was on TTD, right? And so there was some things that he was talking with the adjuster about on the phone and blah, blah, blah. And one of the things that came up was this during the depo, sorry. He said, I used to go to the gym. Now, you might just take that and say, okay, well, they used to go to the gym, they don't go anymore, Well, a lot of people that go to the gym, humans are creatures of habit, and people that have habits of going to the gym, even though they get injured, they probably still go in some capacity. And so I saw that during, in the transcript of the depo, and I said, this might be a good idea to get out there and check this guy out a little bit, just see what he's doing. It was a larger claim. I want to say high six figures. And they said, okay, well, let's check this guy out a little bit, right? Now, the only thing he shouldn't have said was, I used to go to the gym, right? And well, he should have said it because he's telling the truth during the depo, right? Now, but because he said it is what opened it up to the next portion here. So we go out and do some video. Well, let me restart it. I don't know why it started there, but oh, great. Sorry, still learning this webinar type thing here. All right.
You're doing great.
Thank you. All right, so here's the video. Again, it's okay. Sorry, that's not starting the video. It's moving the presentation. All right, so let's just click on that. There we go. So this is actually at a 24-hour, Lifetime Fitness. I'm sorry, Lifetime Fitness up in Roseville. And again, back injury, TTD. You saw him out there playing some racquetball Actually, right before that, which is the issue with the film right here, he was actually playing some basketball as well. So with back, oh yeah, so he goes out there and he lifts, does all the bench press and all that kind of stuff, and then he goes and relaxes inside of the pool. After that, we go home that day, and it's around Christmas time, like you can see, December 9th, and he sees some of the lights that he put up before, and he says, I don't really like that. So he gets his little stool out here, and he starts doing a little bit more. So he goes around the corner, and I get really upset because I'm like, oh man, this is going to be some great video. He's up on his stool, but I can't see him. Well, luckily he comes over, and oh yeah, that doesn't look quite good either. So he's going to do a little bit more. Now, as you can tell, the film very, very steady. We shoot video inside of our vehicles with tripods all the time. And right now we're probably about 200 yards away from him. So even if he did look and think a little something of our vehicle, he wouldn't be able to see us. Now, this is one of my favorite parts of this video. He's way up there and he falls. Now, somebody with a back injury that's TTD and they fall like that, they shouldn't really be able to get back up and kind of just do things as normal, right? So the most important thing with this case was after that happened, and obviously after his gym sessions and that kind of thing, we do more days, right? Which is exactly what we did. We went out there and we got him in the gym, I want to say 4 more times, 4 separate days. He was in there actually doing quite a bit of bicep work, back work, and chest work. And yeah, and then this part right here, obviously somebody that has a back injury shouldn't really be bending over at the waist, you know, for as long as he did. So he was down there and I don't quite know what he was doing when he was down there, but then he gets back up and continues to be able to work on a ladder, be able to reach above his head, you know, all that kind of stuff. Lift a ladder with like that with no problem. Pretty good idea. So we actually went to court after that, and I believe they got a minimal takeaway, which the attorneys and the clients were ecstatic about. Oh, and then this was one of the other days there. Yeah. All right. Now we move on to our next case. This is Little Miss Liar Pants. She was a 32-year-old female elementary school worker. She tripped over a second grade student. The date of injury was 10/28/18. Her complaints was she couldn't walk more than 50 feet without a break. No squatting, kneeling, or bending. No knee bend greater than 20 degrees. Off work, can't accommodate, right? So this is the part where I like to ask you, well, what would we typically do? What would you do if you got a claim like this, right? Some people say, oh, well, yeah, we send surveillance out. Or, oh, yeah, I'd send him to the doctor. Or, oh, I'd do this, right? Well, if anybody ever tells me, you know, what was on this screen right here, the first thing that I say is, let's just check out social media real fast, right? The reason for it is she kind of fits the demographic of social media presence, right? She's 32 years old, which is still very young. Now, the youngest that we have seen on social media, and we do some personal injury cases and things like that too. We've actually checked out kids that are about 14 years old is the lowest that we've seen. And then if they're younger than 14, then we typically look at their parents' pages to try to find information about them and, you know, if they're injured and that kind of thing. Obviously, the work comp part, you know, usually they're 18 and above because they're actually working. But this one, 32-year-old, definitely online. If she doesn't have a presence online, it's going to be a huge outlier. The age range for social media nowadays is typically between about the 14 to 15 range to about the 60 range. It used to be 55, but as those people are getting older, they're still on social media. My mom is now 72, don't tell her I told you. And she's on social media most of the time just to check out what we're doing and see how the grandkids are doing and all that kind of stuff. But she also travels and she posts a lot of her stuff up there as well. She doesn't know how to privatize her stuff as well. So I do need to teach her how to do that, you know, all the time and say, hey, you put that out for public people. We don't need everybody to see this. So probably the same thing that your subjects would do. So this one, after we see all that information, I say, let's check out online a little bit and see what happens. And so we checked online. So we did a social media search. Her Facebook, completely private. Couldn't see anything. Now, the only thing that you can see when somebody's page is private is the profile pictures, and it will actually show you on Facebook. It'll say profile picture updated or updated profile picture, something in those terms. If you can see that, but you can't see other posts, that means that their profile or that their Facebook page is marked to private, and the only thing that you can see is their profile pictures. Now, so we could see her profile pictures, but from those pictures, we could tell that she was married. She had 2 children who are approximately 4 and 2. Her Instagram was completely locked. Instagram tells you immediately, all you can see is that one little picture, and then it says, oh yeah, you know, this profile is private, follow if you want to see something. Obviously, if you're a claims examiner and you're looking at somebody else's page, and you know, with that part, you do not want to try to friend people, do any of that kind of stuff. It's still in the very, very gray area, and your attorneys will probably tell you this too. If they are represented and you try to follow them, that kind of acts as the you know, instead of the attorneys talking to each attorney and then talking to the people, it's you're going directly to the other person, right? Ex parte communication. That phrase slipped my mind for a second. All right, so we got Instagram completely locked, couldn't see anything there. Twitter, there was a few posts, but no original content. So she had just posted other things that other people had already posted, retweeted them. And then this is the part where I usually like to ask, okay, well, what do you do now, right? And people are like, okay, let's go do surveillance. And it's like, I like it too. You know, I love great surveillance. I love going out and getting some great film. But also at the same time, we like to make sure that we're using the money and we're using it properly, right? So in this case, instead of just looking at her page, we always look at everybody that's associated with her. So we're talking about her husband, her kids, which 4 and 2, they don't have anything. Maybe in-laws, maybe friends that we can find, anything like that, right? So on this one, we went and we looked at her husband. And we call him the world's best husband because he is so caring and proud of his wife. So on his Facebook page, it says, so proud of my wife for fighting through, on the road to winning, #competition, #bikini contest. Now, after we see that, then I say, oh, yeah, we definitely need to do some surveillance after this, because if she's doing a bikini contest, some type of competition, she's definitely going to be going to the gym, doing some type of athletic activity. Now, the only bummer would be if she has a home gym and doesn't go anywhere, right? But if she did have a home gym, maybe it's in the garage and we can, you know, be able to shoot inside the garage to be able to get that film. And then the bottom part, I thought this was just funny. The other day, my wife asked me to pass her the lipstick, but I accidentally passed her the glue stick. She still isn't talking to me now. And that's, I think it's fun. So then we go out and we do some surveillance. So on this date, she's actually walking towards the medical appointment that she has. And it's pretty good limp there, right? Somebody that has a knee injury can't really bend it past 90 degrees. All right, that seems pretty legitimate, right? But knowing that she's trying to do this bikini contest, this some type of competition, then we're like, it's kind of questionable. So on that same day, after she goes to the doctor's appointment, she decides to do this. There we go. Oh, the next one. Sorry about that. All right, here we go. She decides to go to the gym. Now on a treadmill, pretty decent little pace for somebody with a knee injury, right? Now with her limping before and not now, obviously that's a big deal. This part right here, you can look on the right. Yeah, there's not a lot of weight there on that first one, but she adds probably double the amount of weight. Again, not supposed to bend her legs more than 90 degrees. Oh, well, this is a lot more than 90 degrees. Puts a lot of strain on your back and on your legs. And then, like I said, it just keeps getting better. Whoa, look at that deep knee bend right there. Now, you might be asking how we shoot this film. A lot of different ways. Everybody has a different way of taking film inside of an establishment. Now, some people will also say, well, are you actually allowed to film inside of a gym? Well, inside of a gym, there's no expectation of privacy. Anybody is allowed to go into that gym, though you do need to pay for, we just bought a day pass and we're able to go in. Now, we'll actually talk about in a little bit the places that you can and you can't film. But some people actually take their whole video camera inside, and the video cameras are a lot smaller than they used to be when started this industry. You used to have to hold the camera over your shoulder. You guys remember those ones with the VHS tapes, right? Then they got smaller and they were little camcorders with like the little cassettes. Now they're super tiny, and if you have one, it's more or less just a hard drive that's on a little camera. I can hide it in my hand and just kind of rub it in with my sweatshirt or something like that. Also, I actually have one here. This is the easiest camera. It's a key fob, right? It looks exactly like a key fob, right? The exact same. It has the unlock, the lock, and then the trunk button. And all we do is there's actually a little keyhole in the front here. We push this button. Once we push the button, you can see on the back, there's a blue dot. That blue dot lets you know that it's on. When you press it again, it turns to purple. That lets you know that it's recording. And then you just hold it in your hand like such, obviously not up like I'm doing right now, but you hold it like that, and nobody's ever even walked up and said, oh, hey, why are you holding a key fob? Nobody ever knows. So that is the internal camera. Now, don't tell everybody about that, all right? So we got the world's best husband here, and let's move on to the next part. Anybody have any questions up until now about social media, about any of the things that we've talked about so far? Please jump in.
So far, no questions, but I'm here waiting to see them. Although I gotta say, a lot of people do love the all-inclusive that you went to.
Oh, yes, the all-inclusive was amazing. It was at that same place where, was it Crash My Playa, that country concert is? And it looked like it'd be an amazing time down there. But all right, so on to surveillance investigations. Now, what are the limits of a surveillance investigator? Pretexting and surveillance, right? This is the time where I like asking the question to everybody. Pretexting, I don't even know if most people know what pretexting is. Pretexting is more or less making up something in order to get some information out of somebody. So sometimes we'll call the claimant, when they're not represented, to try to figure out where they live. Sometimes the examiner doesn't have an updated address. Sometimes they just move and we have no idea where they're at. Obviously, we run it through all of our background databases and all that kind of stuff. Now, with the background databases, the only time that information will get sent to those background databases is when you have something with a bill there, right? So if you're paying a lease to an actual company, that company might run your credit, and then it might get reported to the credit bureaus that you are renting a residence there, right? Anything with a credit card, a phone bill, electricity bill, water bill, something like that. Now, if somebody goes and they rent a room from a homeowner, right, and there's no bills in that person's name, nothing will come up on our database about them actually moving to that location. So if that's the case, sometimes we'll pretext. Now, there are limitations of what we can and can't say during pretexting. We cannot more or less make them think that we are somebody that we aren't. So if we say, oh, I'm a part of the Sacramento Police Department and we're calling because we need to know your address and that kind of thing, well, we're not allowed to impersonate a police officer, right? Now, who we are allowed to, quote unquote, impersonate would be somebody with a fake company. So we can't say we're with UPS or FedEx, but what I like to say is, hey, we're with BRG Transport. There's a package that we're trying to deliver. The address is kind of rubbed off and my driver doesn't know which address this is supposed to go to. And typically I tell them their old address, right? So if their old address was 420 Deer Lane Drive or something, I would say, hey, yeah, I've got you on Deer Lane, but I don't like the address part actually rubbed off. Like, is that the actual, like, what's the actual number? And if you ask it like that, most of the time they'll just tell you, oh yeah, that was 420, but I actually don't live there anymore. I moved to, this address over here in Modesto. And then I say, okay, well, are you planning on being there during this time? Because we do need you to sign for it. And they're like, oh yeah, I'll be there from this time to this time. Fantastic, right? So then we get out there and we're like, okay, well, now we know where they're at. They are expecting somebody to be at their house, though we never show up. And so even if they don't live there specifically, they might go there at that time in order to get that package, and then we can tail them from there. So that's an example of a type of pretexting that you can possibly do. And then some limits on surveillance as well. What are we allowed to do? What are we not allowed to do, right? Now, with the no questions or chiming in and stuff, we'll just kind of get to the part of the answers there and kind of where we'll go to this next part. All right, so some of the limits, what not to say, right? We already talked about that. Pretexting, phone call or door knock. You cannot claim to work for a legitimate company, like I mentioned. You have to make it up. It has to be, not a legit company. Door knocking. EMI with my company, we rarely, and I'm talking rarely in the last 5 years, have probably done it once or twice. We do not door knock. The reason for that is there's so many things that you can do other than door knocking that aren't as risky. I do not like to add any type of suspicion to an investigation, because it's hard enough to be able to follow somebody around that doesn't know that they're being followed, but somebody that is slightly looking, it's almost impossible, right? You'd have to have 2 investigators on it. It's going to cost you double. It's a pain in the butt. So instead, we just take those things out. We don't knock on a door and say, hey, I'm looking for my dog, Fido. And then they know what the investigator looks like. And then all of a sudden later that day, they see him in Safeway and they're like, you're the same guy that came and knocked on my door, right? So we don't do any of that. As far as the surveillance part, you do need to be aware of a few things. One of the things is it has to be done on public property. You cannot shoot video from private property. It has to be just public. So from the street is perfectly fine. From the sidewalk is perfectly fine. Once you walk onto that person's grass and you start shooting video, that video is no longer able to be evidence if the other attorney kind of asks you those questions and says, yeah, I was on private property when I shot it. It will get thrown out. Every part of that investigation will get thrown out. Expectation of privacy. We discussed it a little bit with the gym. So here's the parts with the gym. Anything with expectation of privacy. In a bathroom, you are expected to have some privacy, right? In a changing room. I always like to ask the question, what about in a hot tub or a sauna, right? In a hot tub or a sauna, it kind of depends. If the sauna is gender specific, if it's inside the women's dressing room or the women's restroom or locker room, and the same thing with the men's, there is an expectation of privacy there. So you wouldn't be able to film. Now, if it's a joint thing and just anybody can go into those saunas or those hot tubs or anything like that, you have no expectation of privacy at that point. I have videotaped in a sauna before. The only reason why I had to stop is because the camera overheated and got way too hot, right? Because I don't even know how hot it is in there. But yeah, it ended up turning off. But got a little bit of film, And again, what kind of quality film can you get inside the sauna? If they're not supposed to be sitting for a certain amount of time, something like that, maybe it would be worthwhile taking a risk to go in there. But if they're not allowed to, lift more than 50 pounds inside the sauna, it's probably not worthwhile going into, right? Fences. So there's some interesting things about fences. One of them is if you have just a regular wood fence, just like most people do it on their houses, separating them from neighbors. If there is a little knot taken out of one of those fences, you actually are not allowed to film through that hole, because the expectation is this fence is put up for privacy, but because there's that little knot that just fell out, you still are not allowed to shoot video through that. Now, they've tried to extend that a little bit, which is pretty interesting, to like a chain link fence. Now, somebody puts up a chain link fence, there shouldn't really be some expectation of privacy on that, right? So I have seen some people try to fight that and say, there was a fence up, that's privacy. Every single time I've seen that though, it's been accepted. The judge is like, no, there's no expectation. It was that type of fence. It wasn't an actual solid fence, right?
Hey, Eric.
Yes.
Frank wants to know, has any investigator ever been caught by the claimant filming them in your experience? Or
Absolutely.
perhaps they called the police or, threatened the investigator? Good question, Frank.
Yep. So yes, that has absolutely happened. I've had the police call on me a number of times. All depends on the actual situation, right? We were following a police officer the other day, who we were not told prior, but they had done surveillance on him before, and the previous investigator got caught. And so we went out there not knowing that there were any investigations done prior. We see him, we start following him, and everything seems to be fine. We follow him the first day. He actually does a lot of things. The next day, we're like, oh, this is perfect. This guy has no idea. He doesn't look in his rearview mirror. He never looked at us once. The next day, we start following from his house, and guy gets pulled over by other police department officers. And we're like, well, how did they know about this, right? Well, come to find out, yeah, they had done surveillance before. They had caught the previous investigator, and so his suspicions were a little bit higher on our day. Now, any investigator that tells you that they've never been caught is doing one of two things. One, they're lying to you, and then two, they are staying so far away that they're just not getting all of the video they should have gotten. So we'd like to play on this line of never be way too close, but never be way too far away. And we try to play in that little area just because that's the time where you get the best video. If we're staying way too far away, we're not going to be able to get that video of, them working in their front yard or them going to the gym and going inside and actually following them, because we're way too worried about getting caught, right? Now, we haven't been caught that often, but yes, it definitely does happen. Yeah. And what I would tell you, anytime your investigator tells you that they got caught or something happened, just ask them questions about it, right? My biggest thing is I tell you exactly what happened, because once I tell you exactly what happened, I can explain to you the reasons why we made decisions that we made. Now, if we get caught and we did something wrong, something that we shouldn't have done, we take care of the cost entirely. Like if we mess up, I'm going to eat that every day. I'm not going to lie to you at all, and that's the biggest thing. So, all right, so we talked about fences a little bit, and that was a great question. Getting caught and having police called out on you of like a suspicious car. They'll come knock on the windows. I give them my ID real fast. They're gone in 2 minutes, and they continue to let us do surveillance. There's no problems with us being out there and actually doing surveillance. Sometimes we will actually call the police departments in the morning to say, hey, this is our car, this is our license plate, we're in the area, we're going to be here until about 3 or 4. Just wanted to give you a heads up. And then if somebody does call in, they will actually call us and say, hey, somebody called in, you might want to move, you might want to, do something different. And then we'd be like, okay, yes or no, right? Now, in this case of like police officers, firefighters, anybody in like the public sector like that, we never call in, just because we don't know if their friend is somebody that we're actually investigating. We don't know if that dispatch is the husband, wife of the person that we're actually checking out, or any of that kind of stuff. So we just steer clear of that, if that makes sense. Okay. So surveillance, elevation changes. Now, talking about the public property part, right? So you have to be on public property. Any type of elevation change where you could actually look over one of these fences is perfectly fine. Now, if we park our car on the street and then we stand on top of our car to be able to see over that fence, that is not legal. That's illegal. You cannot do that. You cannot use anything that is not a typical part of the I guess the world type of thing, because we drove our car there, right? It has to be actually there. So we couldn't climb up on a tree. We'd have to be able to see it from the ground level of wherever we would be at. Now, if there's an elevation change, if there's a hill around or a mountain that is public area, you can go up onto that public area and take your camera and zoom into somebody's backyard, and that is perfectly fine. They have absolutely no expectation of privacy in that regard. My neighborhood, we have like a fire break around the entire development. And so if we actually walk on that fire break, and it's just a paved road, some people have like the wrought iron fences, not like the wood fences, but just the wrought iron fences. And sometimes we actually walk up and then we're actually able to see down into the backyard of those people. If they had a claim, we could walk on that public property, stand up there, shoot over their fence straight into their backyard, and that is perfectly fine. No problems with that at all. Something like churches. So the only time you cannot film in a church is typically when somebody is praying or something like a sermon is happening. So when they're actually in a church service, you can't film, right? Because there is a little expectation of privacy of, hey, you know, I'm praying to my God, and you know, I have that relationship with God that I would do, right? Now, if some people kneel in church and that kind of thing, if somebody has a knee injury and they get down to kneel to pray to their God, a judge or a jury would take a look at that and say, yeah, they're hurt, but they're gonna do that because they want to pray to their God. Now, it might have hurt them a lot to be able to do that, but people would do that because of, you know, one of their religion, right? Gyms. So we kind of talked about gyms already. The only place that we can't go really in a gym is a locker room or bathroom, right? Any place where somebody would have that expectation of privacy. Bathrooms, you never go in at all. You can go in there just to see what they're doing, but as far as videotaping, no. And then medical appointments. So medical appointments are very, very useful. When we walk into a medical appointment, walk into the building, we don't film for minutes, right? We don't film to say, oh, well, here's how they were walking when they were inside of the building. Now, if they're walking to the building, that's perfect, right? Because they're outside, public property, all that kind of stuff. Now, once they get inside, it's a little iffy just because they're inside the building. Now, especially when they're inside of the actual medical office, we don't film at all for video purposes. The only time we will film inside of that little area is just to ID the person, right? So that wouldn't be a part of the evidence, right? We would take video, we'd maybe send it to the adjuster, 5 minutes after that while they're still in their appointment and say, hey, is this the actual person? Can you get a confirmation of that ID, right? If we didn't hear their name being called or something like that. So that's the only time we'd be in a medical appointment actually filming that kind of thing. And then unfortunately, entrapment. Years ago, you used to be able to, drop $1 on the floor. You used to be able to pop somebody's tire and check them out as they're changing their tire. You used to be able to give somebody a trip to Hawaii that's fully paid with, parasailing, horseback riding, all that kind of stuff, and go there and actually film. Unfortunately, now they said that you can't do that anymore, which would be awesome to do. And anybody that has a case in Hawaii, I'm more than happy to go. So you just let me know about that one. All right. So that's some of those things of what not to say during or what not to do during pretexting and surveillance.
Okay, Eric, got a question.
Yes.
Stephanie wants to know if the elevation change works in an apartment complex. For example, if you're trying to look at somebody's place and you're able to take some steps and then you're able to look into their backyard or a common area.
Sure. So if I'm understanding the question correctly, if there's an apartment building that's say 8 levels high and you go up into that apartment complex and then you're shooting down from that apartment complex to a fenced-in area, the answer would be no. And that answer is no because that apartment complex is private property. Now, if you're on I'm talking like with the elevation changes of a hill, something like that would be a public roadway that would be up in an elevation change. And that's kind of what I'm talking about. Now, there was a case in New York where somebody shot a picture from their apartment into somebody else's apartment and took a picture of this family eating, or they were doing something in that area. And they took a picture, they promoted it, it actually got pretty decently well known. And the people that were in the picture, they ended up suing the photographer saying, that's a breach of privacy, blah, blah, blah. And it actually got overturned by the judge, and the judge said, no, with your window open, you have no expectation of privacy. There's millions of people that could have looked in there at any point. You didn't have your blinds down, there was nothing there. So they actually got it thrown out and said, no, there's no expectation of privacy in that case. Now, he could take a picture of a video in that apartment because he owned that apartment. So if you're just going up there and you don't own it or anything like that, then that would be private property. You can't do that. So.
Okay, one more question. Camille wants to know if, as an investigator, if you guys ever make a fake profile as a way to be able to follow people on social media that might have private accounts, or would
Sure.
that be considered a breach of expectation of privacy?
Sure. Yeah. So that's actually a great question. Right now, I have not seen any case law that says that you cannot do that. Now, what I have seen is the terms of use from Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all the online places with anywhere that you need to create profiles. It says in there that you're not supposed to create a fake profile. You're only supposed to create it for yourself, right? We've all seen people that have created it for their dogs or their cats or, you know, something like that. To me, it's still such a gray area that I'm not going to be that investigator, that company that's going to be in that gray area of, you know, making fake profiles and then, you know, being, you know, that's how we got our information. And so we use our own profiles. There are some people that are like, oh, well, they're what do you call it? The algorithm is now going to suggest that I'm a friend for them. That is not what I've seen, not what any of my research has shown me. And I've looked at hundreds and thousands of people, and I've never actually got asked if, you know, the claimant would want to be my friend, right? In that suggestion box area. So no, I search with my own profile just because I want to make sure that we're on the up and up, and absolutely nothing that we have will ever be able to even be in question. So if you do create a fake profile, that evidence could be in question. Now, at the same time, as a claims adjuster, I would suggest that if you do some searching online, and once you find something, immediately send that out to an investigator, because they're a third party. They're going to be able to take care of the evidence, as opposed to a claims examiner who does have a stake in the game, right? You're hoping to save your client money, and because of that, you're hoping to find some stuff that's against, you know, that person either being hurt or not hurt, so that you can make some decisions to kind of make that claim better for your client. Us, obviously, we're third parties. We want to find all the information that's out there, but we're going to find all of the evidence, right? It can be positive for you or negative, right? We can't really make that decision. We just find the information and then give it to you. So I would suggest, yes, if you are looking for it, definitely tell your investigator about it. I would suggest that you don't make a fake profile, just because there's the only thing with that is, if you do it on your own profile, make sure you do not like, you don't comment, you don't do anything on that person's page, because then they will find out about it. Just by looking at their page, they don't find out about it. Yep. Anything else right now, Di?
No, sir, that is all that I see for questions. But man, you're getting some great questions, and Camille says very interesting answers. So thank you.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, if there's more questions, you know, after or whatever, I'm more than happy. I'll give you my information and shoot me an email or give me a call. I'm more than happy to talk to you more about it, or if you've had conversations with other investigators, and I can kind of give you some more information or something like that. So, all right. So canvases. Is it illegal to obtain medical records from a doctor's office without a release? This is the question that I ask a lot of people. Is it illegal to obtain medical records from a doctor's office without a release? Now, the answer is kind of tricky, right? It might seem very, very easy. Is it illegal to obtain medical records from a doctor's office without a release? It depends. Here's what I'll tell you why when I mean it depends. So you walk into a doctor's office and you ask for John Smith's medical records. And the person in the doctor's office says, sure, here you go. You didn't do anything illegal. You didn't act like you were somebody else that you're not. You didn't give them a fake HIPAA release. You didn't give them anything. You just said, hey, can I have those records? And what did they say? Sure, no problem. Here you go, right? Now, that's not illegal. Now, would that actually happen? I don't think so. So if I actually went into a doctor's office and said, hey, I'm John Smith, which I'm not, and my birthday is January 7th, 1942, which it's not, and I'd like to get my medical records. Here's my authorization. I'm going to sign my own thing saying I give you authorization to give it to me. all of that, obviously that would be illegal because I'm not that person. I'm faking that I'm somebody else, right? So that would be illegal. Now, what a canvas is something a little bit kind of in between, right? Now, in a canvas, somebody says, hey, you know, I've got this guy, he's got these back injuries. He's saying that he hasn't been seen for a back injury before. However, when I look at the doctor's report is telling me, like, this looks like an injury that was done a couple of years back, right? Through an MRI or x-rays or whatever it was. They're like, this doesn't look like a new break or a new tear or something like that. It looks like it's been there for a while. And they say, oh, we haven't treated with anybody and blah, blah, blah. Well, what we can do is we can actually go out and we can canvass hospitals, chiropractors, clinics, dentists, you know, that kind of thing, any medical facility, in order to try to figure out, do they have records at that location? And so what we do in that is we call, say, Sutter or Kaiser or Mercy, or even just a little clinic that's on the corner or something, and we say, hey, so I'm calling, I need to just see if this person has any records here. And all we're seeing is if they have a record or if they have a profile. Because even a profile, sometimes they'll say, oh yeah, they have a profile, but they haven't been treated here, right? Now, asking those questions, there's nothing illegal about that. Nothing HIPAA protected about that. More or less, the easiest way to explain it is when you walk into a doctor's office and you sign that little sheet that says, hey, my name's John Smith. I have an appointment at 10 o'clock. And then, you know, the receptionist can then look at that and say, oh yeah, all right, now I can check them and do all their stuff. The only information that we're getting when we canvass is them saying, oh, John Smith, yes, he is treated here, right? After we get a yes, that person is treated here, then what do? We call Diane with MacroPro, which is one of the best companies at getting records. And then we say, hey, we need these records. And they could subpoena them to whoever, you know, their part is, because they're extremely good at it. Then they get all the records and they say, oh yeah, that person's been seen at, you know, at Sutter, at this clinic over here, at this chiropractor that they're not telling you about. And then they get all those records, and then when they're deposed, then you're like, so you're a liar, little liar, pants on fire, right? So that's kind of what the canvas is. All we do is we usually ask for payroll or the paying department, and we say, hey, has this person have a profile here? Have they ever had a bill that has been paid, right? If there are bills associated with that person, then you know that that some type of service has been done, right? As opposed to just talking to a receptionist who will usually just tell you, oh yeah, they have a profile or haven't. We can actually see with the billing department of, yeah, that person actually does have a bill. All right, now one of the other things that we can canvass, or a couple of them, are like bowling leagues, softball leagues, almost anything we can canvass. So if there's somebody that you're like, hey, this person's really involved in softball, and again, people are creatures of habit. So even when they're injured a little bit, especially with softball and you know, older guys especially, even when we're injured, we're still going out there and we're going to try to play at least a little bit, right? If we can't run, we're going to play catcher in softball. You know, if our knee's injured, we're still going to try to hit and we'll walk to first base. But we like doing that kind of stuff. So bowling league, same thing. So we can call bowling leagues. And we can say, hey, you know, is this person associated with the bowling league? They're my friend from, you know, back when, and I just want to know if they're in this bowling league. Bowling leagues will give you information left and right. Softball leagues, kind of the same thing. Then we can say, hey, when are they playing? And then what do we do with that? We go out and we do surveillance. And that's when we get, obviously, the best video ever. Now, on the right-hand side here, this was crazy. How often do private investigators abide by the law? 69 people were asked on a scale of 1 to 7, 1 being never abide by the law and 7 being always abide by the law. People reported 4, which is pretty much like right in the middle, right? Now, I don't know exactly. Remember, data can be just skewed left and right, as we've all seen in the last few years. Data can just be skewed, right? Now, my company, we always follow the law. Asterisks. Except, right? There's a couple little laws that we don't really follow. When we're driving and we're following somebody, we don't turn on our blinkers. So if that's what they're talking about with never abide by the law, okay, I can do that. We sometimes run some stop signs, like it happens. Red lights, we don't want to run ever, but sometimes it does happen, like we're half a second late, you know, something like that. So if that's the case, okay, we kind of break the law sometimes. However, in everything else that I'm telling you right now, canvases, we don't want to, you know, appear to be somebody that we're not, you know, all the pretexting, everything else that we talked about, I don't want to break any of those because, to be honest, one case is not worth losing the company, losing license, losing my livelihood. It's just not worth it, you know? So, all right, move on to the next one here. All right. Now, some things that you shouldn't say in a surveillance report. So think back to all the surveillance report that you guys have seen over the years. There are a lot of companies that do this first one that it's very, very elementary and you should not ever do it. Surveillance reports. You should not put a vehicle registration and then say who it actually belongs to. So when we have our what do you call it? Our username and password with the DMV allowing us to run license plates, we have that because we are private investigators. We cannot give that information to anybody because we can use that for our cases, but we can't tell you, oh yeah, that car comes back to this person, right? What we can tell you is, oh, that car is associated with somebody, right? So we can say that car is associated with the subject, not saying that it's actually theirs or not. It might be their husbands, might be their wives, might be their kids, their friends, somebody like that. So we can say it comes back to somebody associated with them, but we cannot just say, oh, that license plate of 7XJ9 432 or whatever is returned to, you know, George Smith. We actually are not allowed to tell you that. So anybody that does add that in there, they could actually get in some trouble from DMV. One other thing, smoking weed, right? So a lot of times when people smoke weed or they smoke any other substances, we don't quite know what they're smoking. We don't know if it's a cigarette. We don't know if it's weed. We don't know if there's nicotine mixed with heroin. I don't know a lot about drugs. I apologize. But we don't know what is in there. So if we say, oh, they're smoking weed, if we actually get up on the stand and the applicant attorney is grilling us about, hey, so what were they smoking? And we say, oh, they're smoking weed. Well, how do you know that? Oh, well, they were holding it like this, and then they passed it to people. Are you sure it was weed? I guess it could be something else. Well, us by just saying that, okay, so your report isn't accurate then? And then they take the whole report and they get it thrown out. So instead of saying smoke weed, we say smoking an unknown substance, right? Now we can be on the phone with you and be like, yeah, I think it was weed because here, they passed it, they did this little thing, they all got into the car and, the windows were up. And then when they got out, all the smoke came out. I have actually seen that before. So I can tell you, I think they were smoking weed, but I'm not 100% sure. Same thing with, we don't want to say, oh, the subject was a 22-year-old female, 5'6" and 135 pounds. We don't want to say that, right? We want to say the person, appeared to be the claimant due to the age and description, right? Because if we say they're 5'6", but they're actually 5'8", and instead of being 135, they're 155, and instead of being 22, they're actually 23. Well, we had all of our stuff very mixed up. So we want to be very broad in what we put into our reports. A bag of groceries. We don't want to say a bag of groceries because, well, groceries can be a number of different things. They might have pharmaceuticals in there, right? They might have just gone into the grocery store to get medications. And so we should just say a bag of unknown items, right? Didn't use any supportive devices. Again, how do we know that? If they were wearing clothes and a jacket, we just can't see it. So instead we say, didn't use any visible supported devices. And then the same thing when we say a bag weighing 50 pounds. We have no idea most of the time how much a bag weighs, unless they're at Costco and they're getting a big bag of dog food or something like that. And then we can look it up and we know that it weighs 50 pounds. Then we can say this dog food, this brand, this bag that they picked up from Costco weighs 50 pounds per this website or per this picture that we took. And then know how much it weighs. So we want to be very broad with some of those things because when we get brought up onto the stand, we don't want anything that we're saying to get thrown out. And obviously when we get to the stand, we say, we videotaped anything and everything that they did when they were in public view. Other than that, we're not doctors. We don't know if it was hurting them. We don't know, if they were laid up in bed the next day, if we didn't do surveillance, any of that kind of stuff, right? All right. A couple of other things, capture rate. This is how capture rate, follow loss percentage, and minute count. Kind of the ways that surveillance or investigation companies will kind of grade themselves for surveillance. and I'm just going to kind of tell you how some companies skew it so it looks a lot better than what it is, just so that you're aware of it, and then you can ask questions about it next time that you're talking to somebody or somebody is mentioning something to you. A capture rate. Somebody that says a capture rate means over the course of the investigation, what was the rate of capture of that subject? So say you worked 5 days of surveillance on one specific person, and you saw them for 1 second on the last day. Some companies would call that capture rate 100%. We have one case, we saw them on that one case, and we captured video of them on that one case, and we are now at 100%, right? So that's a little skewed. Other companies will say, okay, if you get 1 second in a day, but you worked it 5 days, well, that's a 20% capture rate, right? Because we got them 1 day, 1 second, and then the other 4 days we didn't see them at all, right? So that's how capture rate can be a little interesting, right? Follow or loss percentages. Follow and loss percentages are interesting just because sometimes they'll say, okay, well, they followed them to 6 places, and the 6 places were, well, to their neighbor's house, to the other neighbor's house, to the McDonald's right down the street, to the supermarket right next to McDonald's, and then 20 minutes later, in traffic in Oakland, San Francisco, something like that, you lost them, and for the next 7 hours of the day, they were completely gone, and you couldn't see them, right? So those percentages of the loss and follow, just ask what those really mean, whether it's every single time they follow them and lose them, or whether they follow them from one location to the next. Is there a lot of time in between? Was it a hard follow? Was it easy? Something like following somebody from, which we did the other day, followed somebody from Colfax, which is north of Sacramento, all the way down to LA Riverside area in a day. That was a great follow. I thought that was amazing, right? 6-7 hours of following somebody when they stop at all the places. That's a great follow. Unfortunately, they didn't go to Disneyland the next day. That would have been great if they did. And then minute count. Minute count is what I like to use. And here's how I do minute counts. Minute counts per day, not per case or anything like that. So every day that you go out to whatever case it is, even if you work a half day, it counts as a full day. So a 3-day case, and say you get 27 minutes of video over those 3 days. For that case, your minute count is 9 minutes of average per day, right? So is that a good or not? Industry standard is probably about 8 to 12 minutes a day is what you're expecting when you order surveillance, 8 to 12 minutes, right? Not going to happen on every case, all right? What we actually do here, we're actually averaging about 24 minutes a day, 26 on a good week, right? But 24 minutes a day is what you can kind of expect from us. So if we get 3 days, we're expecting probably about 73 minutes. Forgive me for my math real quick. But about that much per day. Now, I'm going to tell you straight up, one case, we might get 150 minutes, right? And maybe 10 or 17 minutes the next 2 days, right? Because that one day, they just did so much outside. They were working in their front yard, and then they did all this other stuff, right? Now, another case, we might get 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and 7 minutes. But averaged out between everything, those minute counts should be in the 20-minute range is what I would think is a good minute count. And then the last thing with the minute count that I'll tell you, you cannot expect to get a great a bunch of video on every single case, right? It's just not going to happen, right? Did anybody play the lottery the other day? It was up for what, $1 billion, right? And so if you've ever played the lottery and the only time that you played it was for that $1 billion, you probably didn't win. And if you're on this webinar right now, I guarantee you that you didn't win, because if I won, I quit tomorrow, right? Be done. And with my $1 billion, right? But you've got to continually try, because if you don't continually try, you're not going to get it on that one. So what I like to say is kind of 1 out of 10 cases is going to pay for the rest of those 10 cases. So we look on a larger scale, right? And the same thing I tell employers all the time, you got to keep doing investigations, because over time, we're gonna save you a bunch of money. It's not going to be on every single case though. So over the course of that 10% or that 20% of cases is going to pay for the other 90 to 80%. All right. And then AUEs in the interview as opposed to in the report, right? There's some things that we would say in the interview and some things that we would say in the report that we wouldn't quite say. So in the interview, when we're talking to somebody and we ask them some questions about working out, or we find that they start lying, right? Or we see that they're kind of moving around in a way that seems like, oh, that's not really that's not really the way that somebody should act during an interview. We can tell you that kind of stuff. We can put our opinion and we can talk to you about our opinion, but in the report, none of our opinion goes in there at all. The only thing that we put in our report is our complete, what the actual applicant said, right? So we take all their information, put it into the report. We might do a supplemental to you and say, hey, they were talking, they were nudging all around. Here's where I thought that some things happened, where they really messed some things up was in this part right here, right? So that's kind of a couple things for the AOE CUEs. Diane, I know that we're going a little bit long. I got some videos, so I'm going to skip on this next part. This was actually in what I sent you. I played with ChatGPT a little bit, that AI thing. So there was a little thing about PIs, and then the next one was about some claims examiners. So I'll let you guys read that on. Yeah.
You are giving us really great information, and I'm guessing that, people would probably, if it's, AI is new, if it's something we should hear about, why don't you go ahead and cover it?
Yeah, so that AI part that I included kind of on the presentation was just a little bit of messing around, just talking about AI and that kind of thing. We're still trying to figure out how exactly AI is going to help investigations because it's still in its infancy. I don't want to say, oh, this is how we can use it or anything, because I'm not 100% sure on it. Once I am 100% sure, oh, this is going to be a huge topic of conversation, because from what I'm learning so far, there's a bunch of things that it's going to be able to assist us with our investigations. But like I said, it's too soon right now that I don't really want to get into it, just because I like to speak about things when I'm an expert at it, and I don't believe I'm an expert at that yet. So yeah, that's the AI part. But once it does come around, oh, Diane, I'll tell you all about it, and we'll definitely get another one of these together.
Excellent.
So in closing, just a couple great videos, because videos are always the most fun. This right here, oh shoot, it's going to do that same thing.
We can see it going. We see a party going.
Okay, cool. So this is actually an examiner found out that one of his people one of his applicants was teaching. Now, if you can see my mouse, this is the subject right here. He actually taught a choir group, right? Now, he has a back injury and he's not supposed to be pretty much walking and standing. Well, he was standing the entire time, jumping up and down, laughing, doing all of this stuff with the actual group. This is actually right in Oakland. And then a week and a half later, something like that, and sorry for the pixelation, it's from a YouTube video, found this online. He actually performed at Bottle Rock up on stage with her. I forget her name, but this was a couple years ago. But yeah, they're all jumping up and down. But again, came directly from what he told the examiner. He told the examiner something about, oh, I'm a part of this choir group, and I teach people how to perform. And then we saw that when he was performing at the other location, due to just a quick social media search, and it was like, great, I'll buy a ticket, get in there, film, absolutely no problem to film. It was super easy. And then he goes and performs at Bottle Rock. And then the next and last video. This was just one of my favorite. Oh, yeah, let's go to the next one. This was one of my favorite ones because it's the first time that I actually got a farmer, a guy working on his yard or on his field. This was out in Pacifica on Highway 1. That's actually what we were looking at. And to actually film, we had to shoot through bushes in order to see him. Now, we're on public property, but we are shooting actually across a freeway. So every once in a while, you'll see a car go across. And he's out there doing all sorts of stuff that's on his private property, but because of where we were parked, he's in public view. Now, this case is still going on, so don't quite know how it's going to end. But yeah, again, one of my favorite ones, just because getting a farmer on his actual, yard to actually do some of those things, very few and far between. So with that, that is the presentation, and it makes me go all the way back to the beginning there. But yeah, if anybody has any questions or any concerns or has anything that we can help you with, again, we're up and down the state. My information's right there. Please shoot me an email, make a phone call. Happy to help you out, happy to meet with you and do whatever we can to help you. But Diane, completely appreciate you putting this together. It's been awesome. Everybody, I hope that you've enjoyed it and learned at least something, a little something.
Well, Eric, I have to say your presentation was chock full of information we don't necessarily get. I have to say that a lot of times when I sit in presentations, sometimes you can be yawning through it. You were lively, entertaining. You gave us a master class of information. You gave us really eye-opening things in your report, things not to say. I mean, I think that a lot of times people take for granted what the investigator writes down because, groceries coming from a grocery store makes sense. So the way that you phrased everything to make sure that it couldn't be thrown out really shows that you are an expert in this field. If I handle claims, I would send you a lot of files because I think that you do a great job, and I really appreciate the time that you took to put this presentation together for all of us. And as a recap, you provide social media, surveillance, medical canvassing, AOE, COE, is that right?
Yep, background investigations, anything custom to, more or less anything that you need, we can probably do.
Well, I certainly hope that everybody takes advantage and give you a call. So I just want to remind everybody that this is our back to school or summer school webinar series. And so tomorrow we have one on chronic pain and opioid management. Then we have a class on identifying and managing high exposure claims. In addition to that, of course, we're going to have we always have to do something on Medicare. There's going to be a mid-year review, but I really like this one that's going to be coming up. It's TD overpayments, how to administrate them, how to recoup your costs and prevent them from happening in the first place. And then for those of you that handle police calls, we've got a 3-part series that's going to be handling just claims for police. And you can get that information off of our website, all of the different classes. Again, you should be receiving your certificate in the email from us in about 2 hours. And we want to thank you so much for being with us. If you'd like to sign up for one of the classes, go to macropro.com. All the webinars are on the right-hand side. And we will see you at the next webinar. Bye-bye, everybody. And thanks again, Eric. You are fantastic.
For sure. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.